Chapter 17. Intimacy grows exponentially. Doors unlock. People might pass through them slowly at first, assess their surroundings, but soon enough windows are thrown open, furniture is dusted off, space is made, and seats are taken. From a slow, careful start, a rapid acceleration occurs. I once had this kind of intimacy with Noah, with Tammy, with Mr. Jackson too, where suddenly someone you never knew in the world becomes all you know of the world. I have made new friends, Ruby tells Cassie. It only took me 7 weeks. And one murder, she silently adds. Her sister is relieved. She has been worried about Ruby's new obsession with death and murder. Does not have what she calls the macabre gene. And though she feels bad for what her sister experienced, Cassie's solution would certainly not include spending hours dwelling on all the terrible things that can happen to women, making new friends seem like a step in a healthier direction, and Cassie is glad for the opportunity to say yes and actually mean it. The next time their mother asks her whether she really thinks Ruby is doing okay over there in New York City, an expert in omission, Ruby has not mentioned the specifics of these new friends she has made, or Cassie might pause before answering in the affirmative. Death Club would not, as Lenny might say, be her sister's cup of tea, and Ruby doesn't want anything tainting something that suddenly feels so essential. Besides, she reasoned, the very existence of Death Club is proof that some conversations are best reserved for the people who understand you, for those who know that proximity to death fundamentally changes you. Distancing yourself from death changes you too. I could add, thinking of my old friends, what they've become, but I don't want to give Ruby any ideas on that one. Here are some things that happened in the week before the next Death Club meeting. Ruby sees that her local cinema is holding a Gene Kelly retrospective, and On the Town is included in the program. Shyly, Ruby asks Sue if she likes to be her date for the Wednesday night session, and she could almost cry when the answer is yes. After the movie, a light, bright love letter to New York. The pair have a drink in the bar next door to the movie house and talk about Lisa. Sue tells Ruby her daughter was an aspiring actress, spending her summers at theatre camp, winning the lead in every musical since her sophomore year. She was just months off graduating with plans to attend a performing arts college in upstate New York when their driver lost concentration and ran a stop sign. Lisa, driving carefully as was her nature, took the full force of the other vehicle. She would be your age now, just over. Sue meets this night, and Ruby sees how grief is fossilized, hardened into stone. This mother will never stop missing her daughter, both as the girl she knew and the woman she could never meet. It helps to think we might have stayed close, Sue says. If you and I find common ground, become friends, perhaps my daughter would still have wanted me around at this age too. She absolutely would have, Ruby said, and means it. They clink the glasses together, and I noticed the shimmer of a gossamer thread gently winding around their pinky fingers, expanding between them as they pull away. On another night, Ruby and Remy go to a rooftop bar. There is a swimming pool lapping up to the edges of the patio, and people in expensive-looking clothing stand around in clusters looking like shiny fruits in a vine. Every so often, one or another drops away, makes for the bathroom or bar to order another round of expensive-looking drinks. The heads turning this way and that, and clearly wanted to see and be seen. I brought you here for the view, Letty said when they arrived, and Ruby knew she meant the single men in those clusters as much as the glittering of Manhattan at dusk. They stood in a corner sipping at their martinis and talking about many things, but Ruby found she could not form Ash's name, could not frame the reason why she barely noticed these men brushing by in their navy suits and pink checked shirts. The friendship felt too new to unfold into risk Lenny's potential judgment, and something else too. She was so used to keeping her relationship with Ash as secure. It almost felt a betrayal to speak about him now, at this time when she was exposing to so much of herself in the way new friends do. Ash was the only one thing she could hold back, which works just fine when all is going well. But what do you do when they break your heart? They left the bar around 8 p.m. when the line to buy another drink got too long, moving on for mac and cheese at a half-empty diner in a world away from New York's rooftop. As they ate, the conversation returned to men and relationships. Lenny was laughing at Ruby's recent disastrous foray into online dating. God, dick pics are the worst. When she suddenly stopped and waved her fork at Ruby. What about Josh then? What about him? Ruby felt her cheeks go hot. You said before that you don't really notice guys these days, but Josh is a little hard to miss, don't you think? He's handsome, sure, Ruby admitted, and doing so unwittingly cemented this observation into fact so that she will feel an odd sense of anticipation the next time she sees him. A nervous flutter at the heft of him. It might be nice, she reasoned over her bowl of pasta, to have someone else to think about from time to time, which is how her own locked door started to inch open, slowly but surely. Sometimes it really is as simple as saying a thing out loud, turning into newest truth. What, you thought styles were more complicated than that? What Ruby doesn't know, Lenny met Josh that very afternoon for coffee. He told her that he'd been spending time researching the Riverside Jane case and had even tried to call in a few journalistic favours from his mates at the precinct, but so far nothing. It's like this girl never existed, Lenny, he said, or it suits certain people to have it seem that way. When I think about the continuous silence of those who do know the details of my existence, Josh comes as close to the truth as anyone has so far. As they continued talking about me, Letty noticed how often Josh brought the conversation back to Ruby. She's a bit of a mystery herself, isn't she? Lenny couldn't help saying when Ruby's name came up yet again, and Josh's shrug was too casual to considered to indicate anything other than agreement. Kind of exotic too, she added slightly, with her accent and her big brown eyes, and the way she came here on her own, just jumped right into the unknown. Not sure what her eyes have to do with that, Josh had retorted, but he was grinning, and Lenny realised she'd never seen that particular look on his face before, something almost bashful. It was enough for her to get her arrows ready, draw back her bow, for nothing is more intoxicating to a fixer than bringing two people together. This one would take some creativity, she knew. Both her targets were openly wary of romance, but she had no doubt there was potential in this match, and that afternoon Lenny determined she would do all she could to bring Ruby and Josh together, as if this had been the plan all along. It could easily have been her life's work, by the way, playing matchmaker to the damage like this, if she hadn't accidentally bound herself to the death instead. In this week of small and significant moments, a week where these posters with the approximation of my face tattoos on poles and my real name stays locked inside people's mouth. Noah walks past the precinct on West 82nd Street 4 separate times. DNA from the crime scene once again comes back. No match. Neither victim nor parameter are anywhere to be found in any local or national databases.
Everything's closed.
Okay. DNA from the crime scene once again comes back. No match. Neither victim nor perpetrator are anywhere to be found in any local or national database. Question marks remains where both of our names should be written. This is to say, as the days since my murder passed, certain people reveal themselves layer by layer, and others keep holding their secrets tight. Ruby and Josh shows up to the next Death Club meeting, Ruby's third official meeting in as many weeks. At the exact same time, walking through the doors of Grand Central Oyster Bar, Josh and Ruby's eyes widen as she takes in the amber-lit terracotta tiles arched over their heads. He has forgotten how iconic the ceiling of this cavernous room is, and Ruby's reaction makes him feel something akin to pride. It's a city where you should always look up, he says, liking the way Ruby turns to look at him now. When their hostess seats them, the young woman smiles at the pair, the way strangers look at lovers, conspiratorial and approving, so that all three momentarily confuse his occasion. When the other Death Club members arrive, when it becomes clear this is not in fact a date, the hostess finds herself oddly disappointed. Love makes her job easier, diverts the steady stream of workers and tourists arriving each night, the undercurrents of tiredness and resentment buzzing about them. It would have been nice to be in the presence of romance in this spring night. She is not the only one who thinks so. Seated across the red and white checkered table from each other, with Lenny and Sue still on their way, Ruby and Josh find conversation easier than either would have thought. Soon Josh is telling Ruby an animated tale about the famous celestial ceiling of the Grand Central Terminal above them. A funny story I already knew, thanks to Noah, how back in 1913, on the day of the terminal opened, an amateur astronomer passed through the new building, stopped and noticed the blue and gold zodiac mural hung high above. Everyone's head had been painted in reverse, so that east was west and west was east, meaning the constellations were not all where they should be. It is a New York blunder, Josh loves. It amuses him to think about the grandeur of that opening day, and the moment one anonymous practical man looked up and burst the gilded bubble. I never knew that. Ruby laughed, admitting she wouldn't know her Orion from her Pegasus. So you're seeing the skies back to front up there. Either that or the mural was meant to represent the heavens when viewed from outside in. Josh answers. The jury is still out on whether the reversal of those stars were deliberate or rather ironic mistake for a building dedicated to navigation. They're both laughing now, mimicking the consternation of those in charge of festivities in the 1913 opening day. I prefer to think of the lone astronomer just off the train, thumb and forefinger to his chin, scanning the skies, and I see Noel's face in this moment, and Franklin too, watching from the doorway, almost as if they're waiting for me. The scene is blurry, as if I'm looking through tears, but the waves don't come this time. I'm trying to understand what that means. When Lenny and Sue arrives, causing those other faces to shimmer and disappear. We each take a seat at the table. It soon becomes clear this will not be a regular Death Club meeting tonight, with Josh and Ruby still laughing. Lenny asks to be let in on the joke, and soon Josh is repeating the tale of the starry ceiling above them. From this beginning, the story is traded across Cape May, salts and martinis, and caramels remain light, buoyant, and for the most part I do not mind. Something about seeing Noel and Franklin like this has slipped me into a mood deeper than sorrow, and I cannot begrudge these friends wanting a right to themselves. It feels inevitable even as I watch Lenny grimace over a raw oyster and listen to Josh conjuring another story about New York's quirks and mistakes, while Sue explains the difference between lobster and crayfish to Ruby, biting into her first Maine lobster roll. Nobody says they are not going to talk about life and death tonight, yet they all agree to this armistice. I see this understanding pass quietly between them, and I find myself moving back from the table, letting the conversations fade. To watch them from a distance is to see arms touching, hands grazing, broad smiles and secret glances, glasses clink together, forks dropped with a clatter, butter dripping into the tablecloth and napkins pressed against mouths, red wine and whiskey ordered and small, full size. I see how they had travelled a great distance together this past week, like the passengers teeming in and out of terminals above us. If intimacy is exponential, it is opportunistic too. Taking advantage of nights like this, there's surf, lock everyone in place. I am fascinated by the shift, yet that deeper than sorrow feeling persists because I know I do not belong at this table. I cannot join the living as they trade their stories, cannot share any part of my day, my past or my now, the way they do. They are discovering each other, moving forward together, while I remain the dead girl, Jane, Riverside Doe. A month after my murder, without any fresh revelations to strike public interest, I am a new story already growing old, because the people who do know my stories have stayed silent. Friends and a lover too, whose fingers might twitch towards their phones whenever the Riverside murder is mentioned, but they never ever make the call. Just as the number of death clubs can set me to the side tonight, the people who know me, love me, have been doing this for weeks now, ever since, each on their own. They thought, what if that's my Alice, and then quickly pushed me away. When you see it all from the outside, you realise how little of anything is what it's supposed to be. People's love gets muddled up to reverse. East is west and west is east. Sometimes the reordering is unnoticeable, and sometimes when you look up there is a vast empty space where the stars used to be. Life is getting better for Ruby Jones. She has, as she told her sisters, made friends. New York glitters in their presence, and this is more than she could have hoped for. Some evenings like this last one, she might even say that this is she's happy at last, but there is still a dead girl, an unnamed dead girl who shows up in her dreams asking to be known. There is still that bloodied face beseeching Ruby when she closes her eyes. This is not something she can ignore. Ruby knows how to be sad. She knows what to do with her sorrow, but what about happiness? What about joy creeping up on despair, disorienting it with laughter and light? What do you do with that contradiction? In other words, how do you hold your pain close and let it go at the very same time? It is Tammy who finally makes the call. Of everyone who has been the least able to keep me from niggling at her thought, though it took time for her to acknowledge things were not quite right. Unlike Mr. Jackson, Tammy did not subscribe to any of the national papers. My friend seldom paid attention to the news in general, so for a while there she had no idea about the murder over in New York. She really was too busy monitoring her father's sobriety and keeping Rye out of trouble. Both men increasingly used her strength and even temper as their leaning post. Days were full and nights made up for the days, until she let a few weeks and then a few more go by without checking in with me. Back then she Still thought I was with Mr. Jackson, remembering me practically hanging up on her when he came to the door. And if she's honest, this life-long has part of her little. The way I had seemed so consumed by him, it wasn't enough to make her angry at me, but it was enough to stop her from messaging on my birthday. Although she would say she simply forgot, and enough to keep her attention focused elsewhere. She'd reach out if she needed me, she told herself, and that's it, isn't it? That's how a person slips out of your life so easily, sometimes forgetting it simply is waiting too long. Time ticked on until one day, as she scrolled through an online fashion magazine, Tammy came across a story about a recent spate of unsolved murders across the country. Is there a serial killer on the loose? And there was my face, or a face enough like mine, so that if she closed her eyes and laid the sketch from the article on top of them, her memories, she could recognize the eyes, the nose, and my mouth, although she thought all the time Alice would never look so pretty. Still, she tried to argue the worry away. This was some random girl in New York, and Alice was back in time with Mr. Jackson, still fawning over him, no doubt. The niggle was enough, however, for Tammy to call my cell phone. A month ago, she missed a call from me. There had been no further contact since then. When she tried my number after that sketch, it went straight to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Alice Lee, but you probably already know that. Leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. She thought then and there about going to the cops. But what would she say? Oh, hey, the picture of a dead girl looks a lot like my best friend. Where does she live? I guess I don't know these days. Maybe New York City. She was always talking about moving there. Besides, what if the cops came over? There were a lot of the things her dad, not to mention her boyfriend and his brothers, would want to keep hidden from someone in uniform. It was easier to believe that some friendships simply run their course. But last week, as the temperature got higher and the grey sky pushed on the lake, Tammy drove back to town, told Ryan she wanted to collect some cash from her mother. Pulling into the gas station on the edge of town, she saw Mr. Jackson standing at one of the pumps. Looking at his phone, she rolled down her window. Hey, Mr. Jamie, how's Alice doing? Later, in the telling of it, she swear he jumped at the sound of my name. You should have seen the guilty look on his face. She'll say, the way he said, I don't know what you're talking about, and got out of there as fast as he could. But the truth is, it was fear she saw and recognized. She was one to drive home as fast as she could. Walking into her old bedroom, she went straight to her collections of silly portraits were taken together over the years, and looking at those laughing, oblivious face, she knew that Alice Lee would always get back to her. She would never disappear for good. Not if she had any choice in the matter. Mum. Tammy went and lay down in bed with her mum and brought up the story about my murder on the phone. Mum, I think something had happened to Alice. Tammy told her mother everything she knew, the truth, that the man began to unfurl. I'm on the way to being found. So is he. Thank you for listening.